Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Hello, welcome to Environmental and Situational Prevention on College Campuses, updates on implementation and evaluation tools for practitioners. My name is Maddie LaCure. I am the Prevention Education Specialist here at MCASA. Today, I have my colleagues Pate Mahoney joining me from the Bloomberg School of Public Health, Chanel O'Connor from Bowie State University, and Michelle Carter from St. Mary's College of Maryland, and they will introduce themselves in their parts of the presentation in just a moment. And again, we welcome you to introduce yourself in the chat. We would love to know where you are joining us from, your role, if you're at a college or university, anything you want to share with us, that would be great. So on our agenda today, we're going to do a quick introduction to the Hotspot Mapping Project and MCASA, and an overview of our Environmental and Situational Prevention Guide. So if folks have joined us for a webinar or a training before, that might be a little bit of recap for you all, but we want to make sure everyone is aware of the foundational work leading up to this project and the updates we'll provide today. We're also going to walk through the implementation protocol for alcohol-free late-night programming as a sexual violence prevention intervention. And then we will look at the logic model development and the theory of change for this intervention, and have an opportunity to hear from both of our campus partners on their experience doing this work. And towards the end, we'll talk about some of the data collection methodology and the evaluation tools that Pate and the team at Hopkins have created to do a rigorous analysis and evaluation of this intervention. And then we will save time at the end for Q&A, so feel free to share questions as we go. We have folks monitoring the chat, but we'll also have time at the end for questions. I'd just like to start every presentation with a little self-care station here. We will be talking about sexual violence, so please take care of yourself as needed throughout the presentation. It is being recorded and will be shared with all participants, so you can always refer back to this another time. And just sharing some resources here. If anyone needs support, these resources are available to you both nationally and here in Maryland. All right, I will turn it to Pate to give a quick overview of the project.
Hi, thanks, Maddie. My name is Pate Mahoney, and I'm a senior program officer at the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. And the work that we're going to be talking about today has been supported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention under a study called the Hotspot Mapping for Sexual Violence Prevention Evaluation Project. And this project was awarded as a collaborative agreement that was intentionally designed to foster this research practitioner collaboration with rape prevention education partners. And it was responsive to an RFP for creating protective environments as a strategy for sexual violence prevention. And so it supports this collaboration among Hopkins and MCASA, also folks from the health department, and our two campus partners who are both here today. We have campus partners from St. Mary's College of Maryland and Bowie State University. And that's all I wanted to tell you about our project so far. Back to you, Maddie.
Great. And just a very quick overview of MCASA. As Alyssa mentioned, we are the federally recognized state coalition working here in Maryland to help prevent sexual assault, advocate for accessible, compassionate care for survivors, and working to hold offenders accountable. Within MCASA, we also have our Sexual Assault Legal Institute that provides direct legal services to survivors in Maryland. All right, so jumping into this term that we will be calling for short ESP, Environmental and Situational Prevention. Our work is using this term to look at various elements of the environment. So we're looking at the physical environment, the social environment, and the situational context of sexual violence experiences. So the physical environment is comprised of physical things in a geographic space, might be natural features like trees or fields, or manufactured objects like paved roads and lampposts. The social environment is comprised of rules and norms about how people can or should act in a physical or digital space, and these rules are made known to people through a mix of both implicit and explicit means. And the social environment is built upon and reflective of the physical environment. So those norms might be different on a soccer field versus on an online chat forum. And then lastly, we're looking at the situational context, which is a variety of dynamic factors that influence both the physical and social environment. So that could be the time, like the time of day, the week, the month, the season. A social setting, are you in class right now? Are you at lunch? Are you at work? Might be natural events like a sunny day or a snowstorm. Might be your personal goals, like whether someone wants to study or sleep or have a meal, and any other circumstances or factors that can influence the nature of our social interaction. So the situational context is described by the answer to the questions, what are you doing right now, or what is happening right now? And the physical and social environment can have static features, but also dynamic ones that might change within the situational context. So we're looking at what kind of interventions or elements might constitute environmental and situational prevention. So we're looking at an intervention that impacts that physical or social environment that an individual encounters, not the individual themselves, which is a bit of a shift from historical sexual violence prevention work that has been focused on the individual level through knowledge and skill building, awareness raising, particularly on college campuses. And so the goals of these types of interventions are to reduce opportunities to engage in harm-causing behavior, to reduce the desirability of engaging in harm-causing behavior, to increase opportunities to engage in alternate healthy behavior, and increase the desirability of engaging in that healthy alternative behavior. So if we can identify strategies at the outer levels of a social ecological model, like this one version here, we are no longer impacting one individual at a time, but rather we're impacting entire communities at a time, and that is the promise of this work. It's also really important to mention here and think about the impact on any intervention on different populations of students, especially considering that not all implementation strategies are going to impact students in the same way. So being sure to be aware of that and thinking about how our interventions are going to impact different student populations, specifically students that have been historically marginalized or underrepresented on their college campus. So we want to take a moment to hear from folks in the chat based on that little overview there. What are some ways you might think of environmental or situational prevention looking like in the context of your college campus? Any ideas? And reminder that it's impacting that physical or social environment, not individual students or staff themselves. Any thoughts that folks want to share in the chat? What might an environmental or situational prevention strategy look like on a college campus? Yeah, I see late night programming or spaces open later on campus. Absolutely. We'll be talking more about that very soon. Other thoughts or ideas? Lighting? Absolutely. All right, we'll give folks a few moments to keep adding those to the chat, and we'll talk about some examples now. All right, so some examples for changing the physical environment might, as someone mentioned, extending operating hours of campus social spaces to provide students with spaces to socialize late into the night. That is certainly a possibility that might be something that we could work on the physical environment. And the goal of doing that might be to reduce the likelihood of someone going into a private room or space with someone they don't intend to be intimate with or even want to be alone with. This is an example that was suggested by Seamus and Khan in Sexual Citizens about redesigning dorm rooms and furniture in spaces where students are socializing. If we can't redesign those spaces, or it's more of a challenge to redesign bedrooms in those spaces, how can we provide other social spaces for students late into the evening so they have more options for socializing and getting to know people? Another option could be repositioning workout equipment to improve sight lines, meaning removing hidden spaces where someone could be watching other folks in the gym on campus. And the goal of that would be to reduce the likelihood that people would sexually harass others if they're going to be seen doing so, if there's additional staff that might be able to see this and intervene in a situation. And this is a great example that our friends at the University of Kansas were able to implement based on student feedback about feeling unsafe and feeling harassed in the gym space. And they were able to redesign that space and see a lot of positive reaction from students about those redesigns. And so we're also thinking about the social environment, which we're going to focus on for our discussion today. Another option, as someone mentioned, and we're going to talk about in just a moment, is offering alcohol-free, engaging social programming on campus in the evening and on weekends, so that students have a space other than party spaces to socialize late in the evening. And the goal of doing that would be to reduce the likelihood of excessive alcohol consumption, hoping to reduce alcohol-involved sexual assaults, which we know are a prevalent issue on college campuses. Another social intervention could be training students to recognize and offer support. That might be a safe ride home or sober monitors at parties to support intoxicated students and make sure they get home safely. And that, again, goal would be to reduce the likelihood that intoxicated people will either cause harm or experience harm. All right, so that is a
Maddie,
little
we
overview.
did have a couple people also just add into the chat. I wanted
Yeah,
to just show you that, yeah, other people
please.
did also mention some ideas about changing the physical environment by making sure that there was adequate lighting, emergency phones, police escorts, and changing parking so that it was accessible to spaces that people might be socializing in. So those were some other physical changes to the physical environment that people had written in about. So thank you for writing in.
Great, thank you. All right, so that is the end of our kind of introduction here. And we're going to transition to talking a little bit about our guide, which we shared the link to in our webinar announcement. So hopefully you've had a chance to look through that. We know it is certainly not light reading. It is about 65-page document, so it definitely takes time to go through. But hopefully you had a chance to take a look at our guide here or our webpage. Here on the slide, we show the cover of our guide, Environmental and Situational Strategies for Sexual Violence Prevention, that we launched in August of 2022. And since then, we have been presenting in a variety of different settings here in Maryland and across the country to share this resource with folks and see how we can support them. So this QR code will also bring you to the page if you haven't had a chance to look at it, and we'll drop the link in the end as well. But it brings you to our site where we have our guide and the accompanying tools that are available to download and use as you're thinking about environmental and situational interventions on your campus. So our guide is really practitioner oriented, and we wanted to make it really user friendly for folks who are thinking about doing this work on their campus. And we have a 5-step framework that I'm going to do a very brief overview of. And we have additional tools and webinars on our website where we do a deeper dive into each of those steps. So we encourage you to check those out or reach out if you have more specific questions. It's going to be just a quick high-level overview today. So as I mentioned, our guide uses a 5-step framework that follows these 5 steps. The first is to identify stakeholders and a core team to work on this project. The second is to do a gap analysis, which is answering the questions, what do you already know about sexual violence experiences on your campus, and what do you need to know to design an intervention? Step 3 is gathering data if needed. So if there's a significant gap in maybe reporting rates or information that isn't matching what students are sharing either in climate surveys or anecdotally, could you do some additional survey or data collection to learn more about students' experiences on your campus? Step 4 is determining priorities. So thinking about your programmatic goals. What is your priority type of sexual violence that you might be targeting through an intervention, or a population of students that are experiencing a certain type of violence on campus, and how can you address that? And then finally, step 5 is generating solutions and brainstorming what interventions might work on your campus and how you can engage students, staff, faculty in that intervention process. We also have some guiding principles at the top of that we discuss in much more depth in the guide, but we wanted to just quickly go over them here today. So the first guiding principle is to, again, make sure that we're looking at environmentally focused data and solutions, which is certainly challenging given the long history of approaching this work using individually oriented solutions. So keeping that top of mind, that we're really looking at how do we change norms, environments on that community level where we're impacting more than one student at once. Another guiding principle for this work is specificity in situational context, subtype, and subgroup. So this is a really important one to think about, as we know that there is not going to be one one-size-fits-all intervention that's going to reduce all kinds of sexual violence that are happening in all types of situations to all types and populations of students. We are really working on looking for kind of customized, focused solutions that are reaching specific types of sexual violence or specific populations of students that are experiencing harm. So looking at the different scenarios here, we have a party, working out in the gym, studying with a classmate, maybe hanging out with your significant other. Sexual violence can happen in all of these contexts, but in each of these contexts, it might be happening in different ways. And the reasons it's happening is important for us to understand about what about that environment or situation is leading to sexual violence. There are also very important cultural differences between various groups of students on campuses based on race, ethnicity, sexuality, gender, disability status, immigration status, veteran status, and additional identities students might hold that are really important to consider and understand when designing programming to make sure that it meets the needs of students and their identities. Our third guiding principle is risk perception, which is looking at feelings of safety or fear versus risk, which is actual events that are happening. So risk perception is highly influenced by dominant cultural narratives. Looking at the picture here, we realize that most people probably still feel more afraid of the image on the left, a dark, isolated woods, rather than the party that they're going to be at with their classmates and friends. And of course, we know that stranger assaults happen and could certainly be happening in a space like this on a campus or anywhere out in the community. But we know it is much more likely that students are going to be harmed by someone they know, that 90% of campus sexual assaults are committed by someone that the survivor knows. So just gathering information about risk perception of where people feel safe or feel unsafe might not lead us to an intervention that's actually going to address the risk of where students are experiencing that assault. So really important to also keep that top of mind and make sure that our interventions are not based on risk perception alone. It's still really important to know where students are feeling safe or unsafe, but also keeping in mind those cultural norms that might be leading us down a path that won't actually impact rates of sexual violence. All right, so shifting to our pilot implementation, we undertook a pilot implementation with our 2 campus partners here today, starting in early summer of 2023. And it's important to note that we were working in a time-bound implementation because we were working on something that could be implemented in the 2023 to 2024 academic year. So this puts some time pressure on our process that may not reflect the reality that you all are working with on your campuses or in your community. And of course, it would have been preferable to have more time, but we are working under research study timelines. And because of this condensed timeline, we knew that we weren't going to have time to conduct additional new data for that kind of gap analysis piece. So we had to move forward with existing data. So we reviewed existing data on both of our campuses, looking at Title IX reports, Clery crime reports, campus climate reports, as well as kind of qualitative and anecdotal feedback from staff and students about students' experiences with sexual violence on campus. And both campuses found that most reported sexual assault incidents were alcohol involved. And as I mentioned, we know that nationwide data is showing that more than half of sexual assault incidents are alcohol involved. So we know that this is a prevalent issue on our campuses. We also heard from other anecdotal student and staff feedback that students are interested in late night programs that can be an alternative to party culture on their campus and that they can have something else to do that doesn't involve drinking. So that led us to design a late night alcohol-free program to address alcohol-involved sexual assault on both campuses. So we're looking at some of the kind of tools and procedures we set up to measure this as we go through the project. And so the first part here is our implementation protocol for alcohol-free late night programming. So we know that many colleges provide alcohol reduction education during alcohol-free events, which is part of best practices for reducing unsafe alcohol consumption. However, given that our purpose of this study is to look at the social environment specifically, we chose to not offer educational messaging. So there's no messaging about alcohol use specific to these programs. We're just offering that social space where students can hang out in the evening without having alcohol. And so some of the things we set up in this protocol was timing. So we wanted each event to be held on a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night, sometime later in the evening between the hours of 8 and 12 for at least 2 hours. I think most of the events are around 3 hours, but giving that a later option again on those Thursday, Friday, Saturday night events. Staff would be present at the events and be responsible for coordinating and implementing activities, survey distribution, and monitoring the events. Of course, we wanted to make sure that there are food and non-alcoholic drinks available to students so that they have things to eat and drink and socialize as well. A lot of the events have had fun mocktail bars, so giving students other options again, and maybe even a recipe that they could take home to their own event. And again, alcohol-free was a big part of this, that there won't be any alcohol. There will be water and other drinks there, and monitoring for anyone who seems intoxicated or might need support as well. And then programming, making sure that these were exciting and engaging events. The two campuses will talk more about some of the events they've done that have been so interesting and cool to hear about that I would have loved to attend as a student, but making sure that there is some main activity for the students to engage in during the event. And then evaluation. As we're doing this research project, we really need to get feedback and data from the students who are attending the events. So we'll talk more about that kind of process, but that included promoting the survey to students at the event, following up with students after the event to get them to share, what did you like about this? And then we're also trying to learn more about what happened after the event when they left. So we're looking at survey data from the following day to learn about their drinking behavior and anything else that might have happened following the event. So this is a really important kind of protocol for setting this up to make sure that we can show kind of consistency across the events and how we're going to use that to measure our data. Oh, sorry. Okay. And then my last piece here is just a little bit about process evaluation. So again, how we're kind of keeping track of all these events and measuring the outcome. So we have our campus partners complete these process evaluations that give us information on the event date and time, letting us know, did it start on time? Did it end on time? The venue, leadership from staff and students. Did you have enough support personnel and students involved to make the event successful? Information about the activities and the amount of food and drink provided. So did you have enough food and drink? Did you run out? Did activities run as planned? Were there other incentives provided for students to attend? How was the event publicized? Was it through flyers? Was it on social media? Getting some information about how students found out about the event. The number of attendees, of course, super important for us to know how many students are attending, and generally the amount of time that students stayed. And then some post-event kind of feedback from the staff who were putting these together of, how did it go? Would you run a similar activity in the future? Do you have suggestions for future events? Things like that. So we're doing these after each of the alcohol-free late night events. All right, and with that, I will turn it back to Pate.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk a bit about assumption testing, but I'm going to frame it within logic model development. Both of them are important steps in developing an intervention and evaluation protocol. I'm sure many of you are familiar with logic models, but I'm going to start out with a quick overview of a typical format of a logic model, just to kind of get us on the same page. So a logic model is a visual representation of how the work and activities of an organization are expected to be related to the outcomes or goals that the organization is working towards. Although, obviously not every single activity is listed, that would take like a volume of pages. So we try to represent everything on one page where major activities are grouped, and major outcomes are grouped. And the part on the left here that says planned program, that lists kind of administrative things, the resources you need, the actual activities that you're going to do, and then how you're going to measure that you did those activities as planned, which is what the process evaluation that Maddie was just walking you through. And on the right side is a list of the outcomes that you hope to see, with this understanding already built in that there's not just like one column for the outcome. There is the far column on the right. That's the goal that we're working towards. But sometimes working towards that goal means years of working towards that goal with intermediary outcomes. Or it may not be years, it could be months, but that there is a pathway and that certain outcomes will build on other outcomes, then build till you get to your final goal that you're hoping to reach. And so as you build your list of activities, they were on the other left, it's really important to scrutinize every single activity for logic to see if you've got any assumptions about why you think activity A would lead to outcome Z. And then under scrutinizing those activities, you might find that actually it's activity A may not really lead to outcome Z, maybe because of circumstances outside of your control. Or maybe you just need to alter your activity, or you need to be really specific about how you offer that activity in order to increase the likelihood that you would get to outcome Z. So if you take a logic model like this, and then you just get rid of the resources side and the implementation fidelity, what you're left with are just like the activities and the goals. And that's a pretty good structure for what we might call a theory of change. We think that these activities will lead to these outcomes, and that's what we use to do assumption testing. Next slide. So assumption testing is what we call this process of scrutinizing each activity to ensure that it's related to an outcome. And we do it, it's a really very straightforward structured process where we create a series of very simple statements to explain the relationship between every single activity that's planned and the assumed outcomes of each activity. And the statement should be as simple as possible, with the expected outcome building upon prior expected outcomes. So here's some examples of the statements that you would use. If we do activity, it should lead to outcome because, and you write out the outcome. There could be ways that you write it like, if we do activity, it should lead to outcome if the following conditions are true, because. And then in the end, you would have kind of a long string of statements. If we do activity, this should lead to short-term outcome, which would lead to intermediate outcome, which would lead to the final outcome. And then also you'd probably want to be specific about that final outcome, maybe which subtype of sexual violence, partner, party, other sexual harassment, digital, among what specific group of people. And again, the purpose of the process is to make sure that every activity actually contributes to your outcomes. Next slide. So to start our assumption testing, we'll put our main activity on the left, our desired outcome on the right, and how are we going to get from A to Z? How does providing alcohol-free activities lead to a reduction in alcohol-involved sexual assault? And so I'm going to take like 3 minutes, or we'll just see how like people can raise their hands or leave a message in the chat. Don't try to explain the whole thing at once, but maybe come up with one simple statement. If we provide alcohol-free activities, then it should lead to X because, or if we provide alcohol-free activities under X circumstances, we think that there's a likelihood it would lead to certain outcome. I'll give everyone a second to put their thinking caps on. And I am going to share our logic model with you. Okay. I've got a safer environment for those who choose to participate. Okay. So that means if we provide alcohol-free activities, we would be providing a safer environment. And so I think the place we would need to break that down would be, just to be super specific, what about it makes it safer? And why do we think it would be safer? And I mean, I think that you're getting at because people would be less intoxicated, but that's the type of specificity that we have to actually really write out. Okay, so and then another person says, because then students will have opportunities that are not centered on alcohol. Again, we need to break that down a little bit. They will have those opportunities. You'll see how we break that down a little bit more. They'll have those opportunities, but will they go and use those opportunities? So it's part of what we need to get at. But so, okay, so then we've got, if we provide alcohol-free spaces, it will lead to less people intoxicated, which reduces the risk for potential sexual violence occurring. So that's a good, showing alcohol-free place means less intoxicated, means less risk of, and in particular, alcohol-involved sexual violence. And then we also have, if we provide alcohol-free activities, should reduce the amount of sexual violence or sexual harassment because the majority of those incidents involve alcohol. So yes, same idea. And then sober interactions. Great. Thank you guys so much. Next slide, please. So we believe that there are multiple pathways, and that's usually true of the things that we're doing. There's lots of different ways. If we really try to like spell out those pathways, it's complicated. Sexual violence is complicated. We expect that there's multiple pathways, not just one. So I'm going to focus on just one of them, just so that we can get through the presenting it in a way that's super simple. So I've added specificity to our A and our Z. So now our A is provide alcohol-free activities during typical alcohol using times. And Maddie already talked about that how we are very specific about when the activities need to happen. Again, this may seem like a no-brainer, like, oh, do we really have to specify it? And I would say, yes, we really do have to specify it from a perspective of, this is the part that's like assumption testing. My idea about when an alcohol using time is really just based on my own life experience. I don't know, I'm a researcher, maybe things that I've read. But if I go to a university that's not in a place that is typical to what my experience is, maybe their alcohol using times are different. And so we don't want to be offering this alcohol-free event at a time that's not actually, like, what if there's a place where alcohol use doesn't really start going until about 10. Now, how would you know that? Well, you really do have to do some investigating with the student population, talk to people. But if they don't start drinking until 10 and you offer your alcohol-free event from 6 to 9, that's not going to be making an impact. So these little details, super important. And the end specific thing we've got here at the end is that students attending the event will experience and cause less harm. And that is very specific because what we're talking about here for this particular pathway is a student, an individual change. The students who go, we are predicting that they themselves will either cause less harm or experience less harm because they were at that event. And then a different pathway that we'll talk about a little bit about later is a community-oriented pathway about how we think the community might be affected by having these events, even for people who don't go to the event. But this pathway is really about that student who goes to those events. Okay, next slide, please. So these are the main intermediate steps in this theory of change. And the arrows here really represent kind of and if conditions. So I'm going to walk you through kind of how this sounds. If we provide alcohol-free activities during typical alcohol using times, and if alcohol drinking students attend those events, and if while attending the events, students don't drink alcohol, like they don't sneak it in, they could, but if they don't drink alcohol and they also eat and drink the other things that we have there, then the students attending the event will be less intoxicated by the end of the night than they would have been if they had not gone to the event. And there's a few assumptions packed in there, because again, this is kind of like our main trying to make it legible. But the assumption behind that one is that if we can provide food and drink, and then they eat that food and drink, even if they drink alcohol after the event, they've got something in their system. That's going to be a better situation than if they had spent 2.5 hours or 3 hours at this event, don't have anything in their system, and go straight to a party and start drinking alcohol. So there's a few assumptions packed in there. And then if they're less intoxicated by the end of the night, then the students attending that event would experience and cause less sexual harm. So if we want to test this theory, and so this is why, another reason why we do this is how we build our evaluation protocol. If we want to test this theory, we really need to develop measures or ways of knowing that each step is actually working as expected. That's so that in the end, if maybe we start to provide these events and we don't see any changes, we don't see any evidence of change, well, why is that? Maybe it's just, for example, that no alcohol drinking students go to the events. Then the whole rest of the theory falls apart. So it's important for us to know who's attending and if they drink alcohol on the regular. That's like kind of the usual thing that they do. And it's important for us to know if when they went there, did they drink? Did they pregame beforehand? Did they go afterwards and like do a lot of shots to catch up with their friends? Again, if they do that, and they're just as intoxicated than they would have been, but they spent some time at this event, they had a great time, but it's still, that's just not going to reduce alcohol-involved sexual violence. So that's the theory behind our theory of change. That's how we've worked on our evaluation protocol. And now I'm going to talk a little bit more about that after you hear from our partners, what it's been like to get these events off the ground. And the first partner you're going to hear from is Chanel O'Connor at Bowie State University. Over to you, Chanel.
Thank you, Pate. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chanel O'Connor. I am the sexual assault health educator here in the Wellness Center at Bowie State University. So I'm going to be sharing one of our events that had I think our most popular event. Just to give you a little background about Bowie before I dive in. So we are an HBCU, historically Black college and university. So, culture ties on the HBCU culture kind of ties into how we do our alcohol-free programming. We are an urban setting located between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. We are a mostly commuters school, 70% commuters, 30% residential. And then our total population for the academic year is about 600, sometimes about 622 students. I know for this semester, we have about 6,400 students on campus. Change the screen. So our most popular event was actually our first event that we did during Welcome Week. It was our welcome back party. We have partnered with our student engagement team. They plan activities that really engage students. So we were like, hey, why not partner with you guys since you're already doing this event? I think this would be a great opportunity to introduce the event to the students. It's the first week of class, so we wanted to introduce it to all the students coming out. So the activity was held on a Friday. It was that first week of class on the August 30th, and it ran from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. And it was in our big gym on campus. And then we had about 175 students attend the event. Whoop whoop. Sorry about that. So for our records, we had student leaders from our student life group. They would be in attendance. We had about 4 student leaders on campus during the party, and then we had also staff, about 3 staff manning the doors, making sure everything is good. So our student leaders had a table set up to provide information about alcohol-free programming and also to get students to sign up. One of them would be stationed at the table, and then the other 3 were walking around the event, informing students about the survey, our activity, and trying to get students to complete the survey. So at the end, we had a total of 26 students completed Part A. However, only about 10 students ended up completing Part B. So we're still trying to figure out how best to get students to complete both parts of the survey, because we have incentives, we do provide incentives, but we're still trying to navigate that issue. Awesome. So for our recruitment strategies, for our surveys, so we try to utilize our peer-to-peer model. So having the students providing information about the survey, what it is, what it entails, how long it'll take, trying to get them to have students complete the survey, because I think that's better from I think it's better for students to hear from other students than me coming in and be like, hey, I need you to do this because it's X, Y, and Z. So if the students are interested in getting them to promote the survey, I think it'd be more receptive to their peers. For the survey, as you know, they get a gift card when they complete Part A and also Part B. Our incentives that we do, we get different incentives based on the academic year, but for this year we did stress balls, some towelettes, some fidget spinners, some poppet sockets, and some lanyards. There's some items that we know students are interested in. And then we also have an idea, we do have an idea to do different survey promotional activities for our future programming. So we'll be changing our incentives. We get feedback from our students about what they like. So we'll be changing our incentives for our spring 2025. More to come on that. For our events, we try to partner with departments on campus that are already doing activities like late night programming. Because to be honest, as the Wellness Center, most students don't usually come out to our events like a large number, I would say. We're trying to engage a large number of students. So when we do events by ourselves, yes, we'll get attendance, but not the kind of engagement that we're looking for. So we try to partner with other departments that really engage with students. They get a lot of turnout for their events. So that's one reason that we decided to partner with our student life. Coach T, Thomasina Boardley, everyone on campus call her Coach T because she's also the coach for our cheerleaders. Coach T is very energetic. She knows how to interact with the students. So that's why we decided to partner with her. In terms of marketing for this event, as you saw on the previous slide, that's the flyer that they created. It was actually a student within her organization that actually created the flyer. So we did social media. We have Bowie State University, our main social media, and then Wellness Center has our own social media. Our Student Life had their own social media, but we also reposted and reshared to other organizations on campus. We utilize our campus app, that's the Yard. So it's something new that we're starting where all events have to be posted on the Yard. So students are more aware of what is going on for each department. We also did post a flyer to Blackboard. That's something new that we started. So the Wellness Center has a Blackboard module. We don't have any assignments or anything, but it's mostly providing information to students on what's happening on campus in regards to the Wellness Center. And then we also had the flyers that were posted around high traffic areas on campus, mostly our student center and our nursing building, our computer science building, those and our library. Those are our most high traffic areas. Either students are in there or they have classes in those buildings. Next slide, please. So what do we hope to learn? So with this survey, we hope to know more about students' alcohol use on campus. As Pate said, when we're doing this intervention, we need to know what timing our students actually drinking. Because if they're drinking 3 a.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., then our intervention is not working. So if they're drinking the times that we're doing the programming, as Pate said, 7 to 12, that's the time period that we're focused on, then this is a great intervention. We're doing it at a good time. Our impact of our alcohol-free events is that, as Pate said, is our logic model. The assumptions that we're assuming, are those actually playing out? So we want to know, our alcohol events, are they following the logic model pathway? And then are they reducing alcohol events are they reducing sexual violence at the end? And lastly, just student response about the alcohol-free programming. Are they excited about the events? Are they willing to attend more of the events and also let other students know about the events? We don't promote it as alcohol-free events, because I think students will be turned away and may not attend the event. But we do provide that information when they come to the event. Just let them know why we're having the event and why the survey is important. So we're hoping to learn more about students, their response about the events, if it's something that they like, don't like, and then the type of events that we did. So this one was a party. We had a DJ there. There was snacks. There was cookies and cupcakes. And then we had water and lemonade for the students. So we want to know the different activities that we do. Do they enjoy it? Do they not enjoy it? So we know if they do enjoy it, it's something that we can do again and change it up a little. Or if they don't enjoy it, they don't enjoy it. We know we're not doing that if we're not doing that event, because we want to make sure any events that we do is tailored for the students. It's not for us, it's for the students. So we want to make sure we keep them engaged. We do had two other alcohol-free programming. They weren't as highly attended. So we're still trying to recruit students and still trying to do marketing for our events and partner with our other departments on campus. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chanel. And we will turn it to Michelle to give updates on St. Mary's work.
Okay, I'm going to introduce myself second because, again, I'm just a conduit. So I'll tell you a little bit about St. Mary's College of Maryland. We're a four-year public liberal arts mission college, non-religious. We are the public honors college. We're rural, located in Southern Maryland. So if we're rural, you already know there's not much to do in St. Mary's County. Very little. Some of our students don't have cars. So as you can imagine, one of the main activities they like to do is throw parties on campus and drink alcohol. We have approximately 1,600 students. 82% of our students live on campus. Next slide. So here's a little bit about me. So I am the Assistant Vice President of Equity and Inclusion, Title IX Coordinator. So for our prevention initiatives, they come out of Title IX. We're not affiliated with the counseling center. Obviously, that might come with a little bit of pushback from students sometimes, because we're the people who are overseeing the Title IX process and also doing prevention. So I serve as the campus collaborator. Not only do I oversee Title IX, I also oversee multicultural programming that really helped when we were piloting this program, and you'll see in a future slide. I also facilitate Title IX sexual harassment, bringing in the bystander, diversity, and delight in good service trainings. And I serve as the co-chair of the bias response and support team. Next slide, please. So in the spring, we managed to successfully pilot 5 programs. We had to cancel the first one because we just really weren't ready. Our main partner was multicultural, as I mentioned, because when I could not get campus buy-in from this new program that we call Seahawks After Dark, I was like, well, we're going to do it anyway. So multicultural programming reported up to me, so I could mandate that we become the key partner. So we had a Black History Month kickoff with 65 students attending, 4 staff attending, no surveys because the survey wasn't quite ready then. Then we had an after party for our largest Black History Month program, which is we bring Step Africa on campus. We had 34 attendees, just one person filled in the survey. Well, filled in the eligibility survey at the time, and then none who consented. Another well-attended and very popular event, so we're going to bring it back in the spring, was Souls of Imagination. We brought this organization in to do shoe decorating. We had 43 students attend and 3 staff. 22 filled in the eligibility survey. And we were going around and telling people, make sure you fill it in, and had maybe a little commercial break. We were so hopeful. And then 8 consented. Then we had another partner. This was our first time actually, well, not, we had Black Student Union co-hosts the after party for Step Africa, but it was like a co-host, a silent partner almost. But when we did the Discoteca, we actually had true partnership with Alianza, which is our Hispanic Latinx organization. Literally just had to come in the beginning. They ran everything. They went to tables and had people supposedly signing up for the survey and saying they're going to do it. They were really active in the process. The participation was 63 attended, 11 filled in the eligibility survey, and then only one consented. I will tell you that the student org was actually disappointed that they couldn't believe more people didn't actually participate, because you would think when there's a little bit of peer-to-peer pressure that people would have been more likely to fill it out, and that didn't happen. And then the last event, which was our largest event during the pilot, which was a unity dance fashion competition. 102 people attended. There was partnership from multiple organizations, and they were the ones who actually vogued, if you will, during the Unity Ball. So 102 attendees, 7 filled in the survey, 4 consented. Again, very disappointing. They each received a quarter-page flyer as soon as they walked in with the QR code, every single person. And then we had staff at the door as people were leaving. Oh, I'm going to fill it out. I'm going to fill it out. So 7 filled in the eligibility survey, and then 4 consented. So you're talking about only 13. A little bit of better news this semester. Next slide, please. And so we had a pool party at the very beginning of the semester. 108 attended. 32 people opened part A, 26 expressed interest in learning more, 24 consented, 23 filled in at least one item, 22 completed part A, 20 completed part B, 20 filled in at least one item, and 20 completed part B. Well, the good news for us, and we were so hopeful because we had 13 all last semester, and then we had 20 that completed all the way to part B. I'll tell you a little bit more about what happened and why, maybe. The next event was salsa dancing. That was in partnership with Alianza again. Once again, great attendance, 44 attended. I'm just going to skip all the way to the end because the numbers are smaller, and you get to 3 filling out part B and 3 completing part B. The next event was painting pumpkins. 26 attended. 8 open part A, skip all the way to the end, and 4 completed part B. So obviously it's a bit of a struggle, particularly after the first event, to get people to complete the survey all the way through. So now let's talk about what happened different about the pool party. With the pool party, I'm not ready for the slide yet, but you can leave it up. With the pool party, we had a spinning wheel at the beginning. A spinning wheel near the door. And so if they proved that they had scanned the survey, then they could get a prize off the table. So it worked the first time. The second time they saw it, they didn't carry. It just did not have the draw of the first time. So again, successes, spring 2024, we multicultural, obviously was a great partner because I also supervised them. All events were well executed, vendors showed up on time. Feedback was very, very positive, especially for Souls of Imagination and the Unity Ball. So we're going to keep those 2 events in the spring. And so it'll be really good because we'll be able to compare the 2 years, the pilot year and then this next year coming up. Fall 2024, I was so happy because I was able to hire an investigator prevention specialist in May. last year, it was just me in this office. A Seahawks After Dark intern was hired by Johns Hopkins. Yay! Thank you, Johns Hopkins. So we actually have a student dedicated to working with Seahawks After Dark now. We have other interns, like the previous year, we used all of our multicultural interns. That was 5 interns. But again, that wasn't part of their regular job. But now we have one person dedicated to Seahawks After Dark. And then we have a regular Title IX intern who also helps. We have 6 Seahawks After Dark events planned between September and November. The pool party yielded the most student attendees and survey completions. All events were well executed. Feedback at the events remained positive. Great news, Student Affairs is partnering financially and with staff for a November 2nd Scary Fest. Tell you a little bit about that. So we have this thing that happens on campus called Halloweens. It's a time of pure debauchery. We originally planned an event for October 26th because that's when we thought it would be. Turns out the students voted to have that event on November 2nd. Now, what we're going to do is still keep an event on October 26th, this Saturday, but we're just going to make it karaoke and a DJ and some pizza, so that we're literally going to have something before and after Halloween, which is a key time for sexual violence on campuses. So again, a much bigger event on November 2nd. There's going to be inflatables. There's going to be a makeshift haunted house. There's going to be all kinds of activities. Once again, a DJ. There's going to be food trucks. So then this is going to be a really big event. And even Student Affairs has never done a major event to counteract Halloweens. This program will last from 7 p.m. till midnight. Woo! So let's see how that's going to work. It's going to be on a part of campus that's a little bit separate from what's called the townhouse greens, where the main activity happens that we don't like. So we'll be able to focus people on a different part of campus from an environmental situation. There'll be staff, both professional and student staff, around. The attendance is probably going to be really high. Now, is it going to be a challenge when it's outside? Because that's the other piece. Both the 26th event and the 2nd event have outside elements. The Scary Fest is primarily outside. So trying to get students to go back and do that survey, we have to think some more about that. Next slide, please. Challenges. Let's talk about why we had that wonderful attendance at the pool party. Title IX training is required for incoming students. So we had the ability to have that captive audience and have a nice big slide up there inviting them to participate in the pool party. In addition to the fact that I don't think there had been a pool party at the beginning of the school year ever. So I can't say ever, but there hadn't been one. So that event was wildly popular. I think that attendance is going to increase even next year. And I already mentioned the part about the spinning wheel. And like I said, survey completion remains a challenge. We're doing the best we can. We've talked in-house about potentially giving another gift card. You don't want to keep throwing money at students, but we're really pondering what we could do to get the students to actually fill out the survey. In terms of marketing, we have an events section on our website. So all events were put on the event link that faculty, staff, and students could see. There was flyers. We used our social media campaign. And then there's tabling. We have done a lot of tabling this semester. So those are the main ways that we have marketed this event. And that is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Michelle and Chanel for explaining, like walking people through what it's like to try to implement a program like this. And also just personally, thank you for doing such a great job partnering with us. And as everyone can hear, partnering with us in, implementation of a program like this and evaluating a program like this really is a continuous build the plane as you fly it experience to try to understand what's the best way to engage the students on campus. So I'm going to explain super briefly the two of the ways that we are conducting the evaluation, some super preliminary data, and then open up for question and answer period. So we have these two ways. One, the brief outcome survey is the survey that's been referred to so far. It's a two-part survey for students who attend the alcohol-free events. They fill in the first part during the event and the second part the following day. So each survey takes 3 to 5 minutes. It's very short, but still, you got to get people to agree somehow. And we are still working on that. The items that we asked there are some of those items that we were looking to test in our theory of change. Do alcohol drinking students go? Do they drink before they go? Do they drink during it, afterwards? And so that's why the second day, the Part B survey is really important for us, because that's when we're able to say, how drunk were you by the end of the night? And, what did you do after you went to that event? And with that methodology, if we can get people to fill it in, we can understand the immediate impact of those events on the attendees. But we can't understand the impact on the wider community, which is why we have this mini survey cohort. That's where we're enrolling students into an ongoing study in which they are given also very brief surveys, 3 Monday mornings every month through the academic year. And that 3-minute to 6-minute survey asks them questions about a specific evening. We tailor it to, like, when we know there's an alcohol-free event, we ask them to think about that evening. If there isn't an alcohol-free event, we just pick an evening that is Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. And we ask them to tell us about what they did for socializing, what they did for drinking, and then what their experiences were in those spaces. Did they encounter other drunk students? Did they experience harm? Were there times that they felt like they might experience harm? So that's how that survey goes. Next slide. Each school has had 3 alcohol-free events to date for this fall. I combined the data from both schools because, as you know, for some of those events, there was very small numbers of students who filled in the survey. This is really just to get you to see the types of things we're going to be able to answer by the end of the academic year. This is just alcohol behaviors of the people who are attending. So you can see that half of the people who are choosing to go to these events and who fill out this survey have not had a drink of alcohol in the past year, and 36% are low frequency drinkers. So this also shows that there could be a problem with this methodology to evaluate this assumption. So I'm not saying that, and we have to separate this from, I'm not saying the intervention isn't meeting people who are alcohol drinkers. I am saying that of the people who choose to fill it in, that they are not, that half of them are not alcohol drinkers. So might that be a problem for us to see an impact on those people's alcohol using behaviors? Because in the end, it just keeps getting smaller and smaller. And how could we really generalize that? And as you heard, we're having trouble getting people to are alcohol drinkers, and but we just can't measure it. So if we can't get people to fill it in, and we can't figure out if this is really representative of the people who go, and if they're really alcohol drinkers, we might need to not use this method and really just rely on some other methods. But we're going to keep going throughout the academic year and see if we can increase participation. So the next slide, please. Part B questions are filled out the day after, and this helps us answer some questions. Again, do people eat and drink? That's one of the things we want to know. If they go, if we can get them in the door, do they eat and drink? And yay, the answer, at least for this those folks who filled it in so far as, yeah, the majority of people are eating and drinking the stuff that we have there. And when we ask, what did you do afterwards? Even among those people who are alcohol drinkers, most of them just went home. And they didn't drink alcohol. So those are two separate questions on part B, like where did you go and did you have any alcohol to drink? So these are promising findings, but again, we need to continue to keep collecting data. Next slide. So I'm going to show some results from the Monday surveys. I'm going to just show you results from one school's one Monday survey, just to show you the types of things that we can collect. Next slide. So we have, of 48 people who took this survey, 15% reported drinking alcohol on the night that we asked them to talk about, and 23% said they were in a setting with alcohol. So again, this helps us understand socializing. People are comfortable clearly going to an alcohol serving event, and they don't drink alcohol because more people were in that setting. And we saw 15% of the people reported that there were drunk people in the environment. We word it in such a way to say, like, were people slurring speech? Were they stumbling? We have a list of things. And do you think that was due to being drinking alcohol? So over time, we're going to be able to see if more people report being in alcohol settings, being around drunk people on evenings that have alcohol-free events versus those that don't over the course of the academic year. Next slide. And we do ask people about sexual harms they experienced, and we can use that information in a variety of ways. As you can see, these are very teeny numbers here, but when people were, if you look under the column unwanted sexual attention and yes, what you're seeing there is for people who were not in an alcohol serving setting, 8% of them experienced some unwanted sexual attention. But for those who were in an alcohol serving setting for 4 or more hours, 50% of them received unwanted sexual attention. So again, it's just ways that we're going to be able to look at the data to understand how socializing and drinking are affecting student experience. That's my last slide, and just leaving 7 minutes or so for some Q&A. Sorry to have run a little bit over our expected information distribution time.
No, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, so if folks have, oh, go ahead.
So I was going to say, I see that Kelsey writes about there's a value in keeping non-drinkers as non-drinkers, and that is absolutely a value, and that's written out in our logic model, but it's a thing that we can't test. So it has what we call content validity. We believe that non-drinkers, offering these would keep non-drinkers non-drinkers, but we can't test non-events. So we can test that the person who is a non-drinker at the beginning is still a non-drinker at the end, but we can't test what they would have been if we hadn't offered the alcohol-free events. So but it is true. Thank you very much.
Right. And yes, in our last few minutes, I'm just going to go over some resources, but please, as folks have questions, put those in the chat and we will be sure to jump to those. So if you're interested, if this has sparked additional interest, if you're doing some sort of intervention that you're realizing might fall under this process, please be sure to reach out to us, and we are happy to share resources. So again, we have our webpage where we have the guide available to download, as well as tools and implementation resources, some recommended future reading. And, please let us know if there's something we can add to this page as we work to expand the resources and the literature base. We are also available for training and technical assistance. We are happy to set up a call. Stephanie will be dropping the link to our interest form. If this, again, has sparked interest and you just want to chat with us more, we are happy to do that. And here are some kind of ways we can offer technical assistance. Providing training on, this guide or the findings we have so far on trauma-informed approaches to doing ESP work for, staff on your campus, content expertise for data collection tool development, how do we ask the right questions to get this information we need about environmental and situational factors, development of culture-specific engagement tools, and how to interpret that data once you collect it. So we recognize that this is a really challenging approach, and we are just, scratching the surface of what is possible. So again, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we are happy to chat more about what's going on your campus or in your community.
And this is like a super quick shout out. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because we're pressed for time. There is a way for folks who are working in public health violence prevention programming to earn free MPH or PhD at Hopkins. And it's through the Bloomberg American Health Initiative. You can do that programming full-time and part-time. If you'd like to learn more about that program, please follow the link on this page or be in touch with me. The applications for this program for the upcoming next fall are due in December. Okay. Opening up to
Great.
Q&A.
Yes, opening up to Q&A. We again have shared the links for our interest form and evaluation. We appreciate your feedback. We have the last 4 minutes for any questions that are coming up for folks. Please reach out.
And we're also available for questions after if you need time to think through the stuff and then you come up with something like, well, how are they going to measure that? Or what are they going to do about the fact that nobody is filling in the survey? How are they going to meet that challenge? You can always get in touch with us.
Absolutely. And our contact information is here. If Michelle and Chanel feel comfortable, we would appreciate you sharing that as well, but totally up to you. And feel free to reach out to us. Yeah, again, one-on-one, and we're happy to chat more. All right, I am not seeing any questions, so just thank you again so much for being here. Again, we'll send out the recording and some helpful resources following the presentation, likely next week. Thank you again so much. We will have another virtual campus training in November, so look out for more information on that. And we appreciate you being here. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.